10 minutes of Silence 1. A home that smells of boiling water and mint. Iroda had always loved how Timur's apartment smelled: mint, a belated ribbon of steam from the kettle, book dust, and something else elusive that reminded her of school corridors and cold December windows. They'd been friends since their first year, no big drama, no cryptic hints, just two people used to knowing more about each other than propriety allows. Over the years their circle drifted apart. Some left, some married, some burned out, and they remained: rare messages, occasional calls, and, like today, brief, almost accidental meetings. "Come in," Timur said, stepping aside. "I've got tea and cookies, horribly mismatched." "You always say that," Iroda smiled, taking off her scarf. "And then it turns out there are chocolates too. And grapes. And I didn't buy anything special." He shrugged, as if surrendering to her accuracy, and went to the kitchen. In the hallway the warm air touched her face, and for a moment she felt that she had taken off not only her scarf, but also the tension, the tight knot that had cinched her life in recent weeks. She had a husband, Arsen. They had a home where everything was in its place, reliable like a military cart: schedules, receipts, shopping lists, a calendar on the fridge, neat cups in a row. Nothing in that home was accidental, and perhaps nothing was superfluous. But in recent months their conversations had too many musts and too few wants. She noticed it like a splinter, but didn't pull it out, afraid it would hurt. Timur set a cup in front of her. "Why did you call?" he asked. "Just because." "I didn't call you." "You called me." "But you came." "I did," she said shortly. "I'm tired." He nodded, as if expecting exactly those words, and sat across from her, his cheek propped in his palm. His gaze was attentive, focused, one he reserved only for those who truly mattered to him. 2. A conversation that felt more like silence. They talked about small things. About Timur's heroic neighbor, who rescued cats from the basement; about a sudden construction on their street; about a tiny cafe where the owner brews coffee himself and remembers everyone by name. Iroda laughed sincerely, leaning forward, pressing her palm to the table, as if she wanted to keep it from trembling. "You've lost weight," Timur said suddenly. "Thanks for not phrasing it as 'you look bad,'" she replied, hiding a smile. "That's not what I meant. I just noticed." She shrugged, gazing into her tea. "I'm nervous." "Often?" "Because of Arsen." His name sounded like a spoon against porcelain, thin, clear, with a faint tremble. "I don't know," she said. "More because I haven't been able to figure out what I want for a long time. Arsen is good, kind. He does everything right. And sometimes it feels like I don't exist in that proper life. Like I'm a shadow on the wall." Timur was silent. His silence was the kind you go to friends for, not judgmental, not fussy, not canned. Just a place where you can be. "I thought," Iroda went on, "that it would pass. That somehow it would take care of itself. But nothing takes care of itself." Timur tapped his fingers on the table, as if testing whether the surface would crack. "Want to take a walk?" he asked. "It started snowing. It's beautiful. Let's." 3. Snow and a stairwell in the courtyard. Snow really was falling softly, gently, as if someone above were tearing apart cotton pillows. The air was clear, and the apartment windows were yellow squares, like a child's collage. They walked along the little park, where snowdrifts whispered their own geography, and came back almost without speaking. The stairwell was warm and smelled like childhood radiators. Someone had drawn a little boat in chalk on the steps and written, "Wishing you journeys." Iroda traced the line with her finger, leaving a white mark on her skin. "Do you still draw?" she asked. Rarely, Timur replied. I take photos more. It's easier to stop a moment than to invent a world. He smiled crookedly and a little sadly, the way people smile when they know the weight of their words. Inside the apartment, Iroda took off her coat, and instead of going into the living room, stopped by the window. The snow was catching light from the street lamps, and it seemed there was more of it inside than outside. It's quiet here, she said. It feels good. Silence is something you have to learn to listen to, Timur answered and set the kettle on. She turned, meeting his gaze head-on. In it there were no textbook answers, no move to invade someone else's territory. Only something old, unspoken, and very simple. She felt the invisible elastic within her, the one that kept her tidy, proper, safe, start to slacken. Timur, she said, and there was too much meaning in that name. He took a step. Then another. He stopped, as if giving her time to change whatever was about to happen. Iroda did not step back. 4. A line that could have been left uncrossed later. She would remember this moment many times, not what happened next, but the before. That second when the mind could still turn back, when the words no and yes stood side by side on the threshold, like two buttons on a child's coat. They touched foreheads, as if checking whether the light would burn out. Iroda felt a wave rise to her throat and stall in her chest, relief, maybe, or fear. The world narrowed to their breathing, to the rustle of fabric, to brief glances. There was no theater in it, no roles. Only a quiet human weakness pretending to be a right to happiness. The silence seemed to crack, like thin ice underfoot. And she stepped. 10 minutes. 10 minutes that, in her memory, would sound like the quiet after thunder. No vivid details, no cinematic greed, just the sense that for a moment everything was more real than before and after. And in that reality there was warmth, and bitterness, and, strangely, compassion for her former self. When they moved apart, the kettle lid was rattling with the boil. Iroda exhaled like someone who, holding their breath, has finally surfaced. I'm sorry, Timur said at once. I don't apologize, she cut in. If there's guilt here, it's mine. He wanted to object, but didn't. He only quietly poured the tea, on autopilot, eyes lowered, as if afraid she'd see hope in them. Or fear. 5. After they sat, with their elbows touching, not daring to move away so as not to make it final. Shadows from the snowflakes on the glass passed through the room. It smelled of tea and something else, slightly tart, maybe apple, maybe regret. What now? Timur asked at last. Now I go home, Iroda replied. And I'll think about how to live from here. Without pretty formulations. He nodded. I don't want you to think that he stalled, choking on his own versions of sentences. That I was angling for this. I'm not even sure it's right. It's definitely not right, she said, her lips folding into a sad smile. But sometimes not right is the only language you can use to talk to yourself. Timur laughed softly. The laugh was gentle, without triumph. I'm here, he added after a pause. Whatever you decide. She nodded, and that nod was heavier than words. She stood, found her scarf, held it for a while the way you hold letters that are too late to send. Walk you out? He asked. No. I'll manage. In the hallway she looked back, not at him, but at the light in his apartment, at the visible slice of window, at the cup's shadow on the table. This, she thought, will stay with me like a brood of words we didn't say. 6. Home greeted her with familiar sounds. A radio show in the other room, the quiet hum of the dishwasher, a tidy stack of mail on the console. Arsen sat on the couch, laptop on his knees, a pencil in his hand that he habitually tapped on a notebook when he was thinking. "You're late," he said, looking up. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," Iroda said, taking off her shoes. "It started snowing." "I lingered." He nodded. "I warmed dinner," he added. "If you want." "Thank you." Those domestic words lodged in her throat, as if she had bitten into something too hot and too cold at once. "How are you?" she asked, trying to lend her voice an ordinary tone. "Fine," Arson said. "Tired. The report is killing me." "You?" "Tired too." She went into the kitchen and flipped the light on. On the table sat a plate with a foil-covered casserole. She wasn't hungry, but she opened it to look. Inside everything was neat, careful, homely. And that neatness hurt more than any questions. Arson followed her in, leaned on the doorframe. "Listen," he said carefully, "lately it's like you're not here. Did I do something wrong?" She closed her eyes. Everything was ready to happen, a confession, a fight, an offense. But the words stuck, like a suitcase that won't fit on the overhead shelf. "You didn't do anything," she said at last. "It's me. Do you want to talk?" "Yes. But not now. I'm afraid I'll say the wrong thing." "Start at the end." He nodded, exhaling the way people exhale when Thieve Long wanted to hear anything concrete. "Okay. When you're ready." She stepped forward and hugged him, for real, hard, without her usual delicacy. At first he froze and then, it seemed, relaxed like someone released from a cramp. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," he replied simply. "And I'm here, even if you're far away." His words scared her and at the same time, calmed her. Because love, she thought, isn't only fidelity. It's also the courage to admit something's broken and to try to fix it. 7. Night. When the house slept, Iroda lay with her eyes open, listening to the ventilation and the steady hum of the night city. 10 minutes, like a page torn from the tidy book of her days, returned not as images but as meanings, with her body, no, with her conscience, yes, with her need, yes, as a mistake, also yes. There was no romantic halo in these thoughts. She didn't feel like a movie heroine, didn't build rarefied plans. She wanted only one thing, to stop living by inertia, passing each morning station with her eyes closed. She wanted honesty. First with herself and then, as it comes. She understood that ahead lay a conversation. That it might hurt. That Timur would remain in her life as an even light, or vanish like a reflection in puddles when they dry. That Arson would either find a new order of things with her or say no. She didn't know. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself not to know. Snow tapped softly on the windowsill. Somewhere far off a car passed, leaving a furrow on the road. Iroda turned on her side and hugged her pillow, the way you hold onto a banister when you're descending into a darkness you don't understand. 8. A morning that doesn't pretend to be different. Morning turned out ordinary. Coffee, a shower, messages in the work chat marching like a parade. Arson smiled at her across the table, tired but warm, and moved a spoon off her plate that was in the way. "Shall we talk tonight?" he gently reminded her. "Yes," Iroda said. "We will." She stepped into the cold stairwell air and paused by the door, feeling traces of sleep on her cheeks. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. "How are you?" From Timur. Iroda read it and didn't reply right away. She needed not to invent words, but a silence in which those words wouldn't be a lie. Outside, the snow was already turning to sticky water. Cars hissed on their tires, people hurried. Iroda walked at her own pace, not too fast, not too slow, trying to tune her breathing to the city's rhythm, the way a musician tunes a violin to an orchestra. She knew this day wouldn't make her better or worse. It would simply add another line to the map of the place where she lived. And where, perhaps, a new road would appear, not necessarily the right one, but possibly hers. And somewhere between the pages of that map, in small letters, like on the school stairwell, someone had already written, "Wishing you journeys." And she was finally ready to read.